Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the podcast Conversations and Connections. I'm your host, Sandy McGregor. It is a delight to be back here with you today. I have two fabulous guests that I have come to just love and adore over the years, and we're going to be talking all about the gift of Christian education. I have Sharon Roebbelen with me today. Hi, Sharon, and welcome. And I have Alison McGeorge. Thank you, Sharon and Alison, for being here today. So
Pleasure. Thank you.
we have a lot to cover because we have an incredible organization to honor and to highlight today. I love Christian education, and I am so excited to be able to highlight this school because a lot of people don't understand the significance of Christian education and the choice that parents make. And I can't wait to highlight it today so people can begin to understand a little bit more about what this school is all about and its history. So we're going to dive into a lot of that today. But let me just introduce each one of these incredible dynamic ladies. So Sharon, I will begin with you. So Sharon, you are basically one of the forerunners to this school, and I can't wait for you to dive into the history of that because you have such an incredible perspective on it. So Sharon, you have served as the Director of Communications and Admissions at Kings since 2006. Truly incredible. Founding board member, instrumental in rallying a group like-minded parents of a vision to establish Christian high school in the Halton area. You are so enthusiastic, and I have known you for a very, very long time because we attended church together at Chartwell way back in the day, and your enthusiasm is contagious. From you leading worship to, being into the toddler room and the nursery, wherever you were such an inspiration and an encouragement to me. And I know that you've done that for years for staff, for students, and for parents. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Sandy. Thanks for the invitation.
I'm happy to do it. And then Allison, you have joined the admissions team. I can't remember what year you actually joined. Was it
About 3 years ago.
3 years ago? Okay. So you initially started working as a career development and relationship manager, a combined 18 years at Mac University and Guelph Humber. And you have been supporting student growth and development, building strategic partnerships to help cultivate environments that support students to achieve their full potential. You have a passion for travel, which we need to catch up on because you were just traveling. And excitingly places that you have loved to explore. But what I love about both of you is your warm invitation to students and parents to just explore the opportunity of Christian education. Whether parents come or go and they come in for the interview, what you do is you establish something actually in their hearts already of giving them this incredible exposure to who God is and what a Christian gospel-centered education can be like. So whether they choose it or not, you give them this opportunity to just to understand it in a unique way that they may never have thought about it. And maybe that encourages their heart to explore church or Christianity. So there's always an opportunity. And both of you, I've seen you just take this in just such wonderful ways, even with my kids, just in the interview process and walking them through the schools and how nervous they were, but how they left the school just saying, yeah, Mom, this is it. I want to be here. And I know that I'm just one family. I can't even imagine how many families probably feel the same way. So thank you for doing that.
Well, we've done about 6,500 interviews over the years.
I was going to ask, but
yeah, I have. And I'm glad you've had that experience. And we do get a lot of good feedback about students' experience here. And you're right, whether or not they come and enroll as a student, I think that just the experience and connecting with that student is valuable. We really love for them to feel seen and heard and understood and cared about. And hope that translates into an enrollment. But if it doesn't, we like to bless them anyway.
Yeah, well, because they're coming through the doors and they're seeing something completely different that a different educational environment might offer. Just before we get into talking a little bit about your own personal faith stories, there was a verse that was laid on my heart that I wanted to share that I really felt like kind of represents what Kings is doing. And it's in Hebrews 12. And it says, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. And I couldn't help but think about how Kings is helping kids run with endurance that is set before them, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of their faith. And I thought, watching my kids journey through their own faith experiences and their own educational experiences at Kings, and how many other kids are, for the first time, what there's a God, there's a Bible, and how they're exposed to it and they're learning to set their heart on Jesus for the very first time, and how they can understand that there's an endurance part to it, but we're not doing it alone. And they have this environment of staff and the teachers that are helping them walk this journey. And I think that just really sets Kings definitely apart, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we love to see that too, because while most of our students would have some sort of religious experience,
Mhm.
some don't.
Yeah.
Some are the kinds of Christians who would maybe not be involved in a church, not hear the word of God very often,
Mhm.
go at Christmas and Easter, but their parents are believers or were raised by believers. So we have a huge spectrum of students,
Yes.
including some what we call non-member families,
Mhm.
people completely non-religious backgrounds or some other faith practice.
Right.
So
Right.
being exposed to the word of God, being exposed to the person of Jesus
Mhm.
is completely transformative for many, many
Yeah.
students.
Yeah. We never know what seeds are being planted, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's just what I love about Kings is that you're all taking this leap of faith and obedience to do what God has called you to do and letting God take care of the outcome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that for sure.
What choice do we have but to
Yeah,
let God?
it's absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I love hearing faith stories. And before we get into a little bit more of the detail of Kings itself, I would love to hear from both of you your specific faith journey, how you came to know the Lord, and ultimately how you ended up at Kings. So maybe, Alison, we'll start with you if you'd like to share your faith story.
Yeah. Um, so I grew up in the church and was supported by a family who pointed me to Jesus. So blessed to have been brought up and nurtured in that environment. And I learned a lot about Jesus, saw my parents following Jesus, and I knew a lot. And then when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to go on a few missions trips. And those were very transformative for me. That's where I really understood what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus and to follow Jesus with your life and involve him in every aspect of life. And so that was incredibly pivotal for me. And I continue to learn and grow always. We are always a work in progress. God's continuing to work in me and teach me. But I've got a beautiful family now. I am married to a wonderful, godly man and have two great kids who are currently in grade 8 and 11. Um, and as you mentioned, Sandy, I had been working in higher education for 18 years and was feeling like I was ready for a change, but I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know where to go or what I might do
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
So I prayed a lot about it and I waited and I was patient. And it seemed as though God was setting the stage for me to join Kings
Mm.
many years, starting way back when I was in high school, when I had the pleasure of meeting Sharon. We went to church together and I babysat her girls a few times. And when my daughter was getting ready to go into grade 9, we were looking at Kings, and Sharon and I were able to reconnect through the interview process. And it was a joyful
Yeah.
reconnection.
Yeah.
It was so fun to just catch up with her.
Yeah.
And she'd mentioned that there could be an opportunity at King's in admissions. And so I asked questions and explored and engaged in the process and was the successful candidate. And so I am just thrilled
Mm.
to have been able to join the team at King's. So I'm in my third year, just wrapping up my third year with the admissions team.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I can
Mhm.
see why you were the perfect candidate because our conversation right from the get-go, from our first emails, even when I was going through the process with Katie, it was just so wonderful. You just made it the most delightful experience and really good
Mhm.
for Katie because her, coming out of homeschooling, going into high school was a big transition for her. So just having you a part of that process, even when I think our first Zoom call, we had a Zoom call initially. And then just going into the school itself, and I remember the peace that she had when she came out, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm ready for this." So,
That's wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
yeah. It's an important part of the process. I mean, it's a big move going from grade 8 to grade 9 from
It's a big
a smaller
move.
school to
Yeah.
like 650 plus students. So,
Yeah. And I feel very privileged to be in this position now where I have a daughter who's at King's and I have a son who's in grade 8. And so I'm
yeah,
living this process from a parent perspective,
yeah,
but also I have the privilege of you know, engaging with families and
yeah.
students and being on the other side. And so it's a really beautiful position that I get to be in as I transition into Kings and I'm learning the role and getting started. And so it's a pretty neat
It
spot to
is.
be growing from.
Absolutely. You're walking like with the parents in the same journey, and they're like, she
Yeah.
actually gets this because it's
Yeah,
very
I get
considerate.
it. I really get it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Sharon, how about you? Let's talk a little bit about how you came to know the Lord and your transition to, I mean, you're going into Chartwell and then to Kings and how you ended up there and just how God was a part of your journey.
Well, he'd been working on my heart for a long time before I recognized what was going on. So
Mm,
I was raised in a nominally Catholic family. So my parents were of Catholic background. They
mhm,
had stopped going to church. I went to a Catholic elementary school,
mhm,
and it was there, about grade 4 or 5, that I developed an interest in spiritual things.
mm,
And I started going to church during Lent and Advent on my own or with my girlfriends because my parents didn't go.
mhm.
And I always had an interest in spiritual things. And I have 3 siblings, and I was the only one that turned out.
Really?
Yeah. And so I didn't know any other avenues to pursue.
Mm,
Uh, Being raised as a Catholic, you are taught the parameters of faith, but you're not really exposed to any other perspectives or any
mm,
other faiths. And when I was in high school, I had this mad crush on this really cute guy, and he ended up being my husband. um, he ended up being involved in a Baptist church. And so he and his parents would attend, and they would invite me to attend with them.
mm,
And again, I was maybe too dense to understand it, or maybe I never really heard the message clearly enough. I still did not get it.
mm,
And it wasn't until we were married and attended a little community Baptist church in North York, in
mm,
the Finch area of all places, where this young, dynamic pastor explained the gospel message to me and explained to me for the first time, and maybe I'd heard it and it just hadn't made its way into my brain and my heart,
yeah.
but it was the first time I heard about how a person could have a relationship with Jesus. I
Beautiful.
never considered this before.
Mm,
Jesus was a historical character in a book,
mhm, mhm.
Son of God, but had never made it into my heart before this. And so it was in my early 20s when I really, really understood and became a Christian,
Mm,
was baptized. And then my faith just took off,
yeah.
as it sometimes does when you're in your 20s or
Yes.
30s, when you become a Christian as a young adult. Whoa, mind blowing, right? Like, oh my goodness, I never knew this was in here. Like, whoa, this is for me.
What have I been waiting for?
Yes, it was so thrilling to me. And it was just a completely revolutionary message for me. And it just grabbed my heart and it's
Yeah.
never let go. So that was the beginning of my marriage, the beginning of my life as a believer. And I don't know how far you want me to go in terms of the movement to Kings.
Sure. Yeah.
But when we ended up having 2 daughters, Erica and Julia. And when the girls were ready for school, we began to consider Christian education. And I'll be honest, I'd never been to a Christian school before. I only knew one person who had gone to a Christian school, and she was pretty wild. And I just didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
And our elementary school up the street from where we lived was not great. And so we just started to explore other options. And we ended up at Oakville Christian School, where the light of Jesus was really shining bright.
Mm,
And it was so beautiful. Our girls were just embraced by this community.
mm,
They felt safe there. They felt loved and cared for
mm,
there. The learning was excellent. They just had a fantastic experience. So as they were getting older, your kids start to get into the older grades, you start to think about, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And when they were in grades 4 and 6, I really, really started to seriously think about what's next.
Right.
And at that time, there were 3 Christian schools within a commute, but not an easy commute. So
Right.
there was one up in Woodbridge, Toronto District Christian High. There was one in Hamilton District Christian High in Ancaster. And at the time, there was one on the Queensway.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
People,
Queensway Christian.
Yeah.
Queensway.
Right.
Thank you, Alison, Queensway. And none of those were a reasonable commute from us. We live in central Oakville, and it just didn't make sense to me to send them there. So I started saying something that I'm rather famous for in my house when something's hard, or I don't want to do something, or I want something else to be done, or something to be done for me. I often say, well, how hard could it be? If I want my husband to do something.
How hard can it be to start a
Yeah.
Christian school?
That's exactly what I said, Sandy. How hard could it be to start a Christian high school? So what I was thinking was honestly very humble and very small. I was thinking of hiring a couple of really good teachers who knew a little bit about everything, put them in the basement of a church somewhere with my kids and some other kids, and off we would go. And in my naivety, I thought that this would work. And I didn't understand about credits and how you had to earn credits to get an Ontario graduation diploma. Like I didn't understand anything, but this is where I was at. But I started to talk to other people. And primarily it was other parents in the parking lot at Oakville Christian School, because that's where all the action is, in the parking, right? And I started to talk to other parents who were thinking along the same lines. Like, what are we going to do in a couple of years? And we gathered together about 5 or 6 parents and started to pray about it. And covenanted to pray every day for the month of October 1998. We prayed every day for that month. And then at the end of the month, we came back together to see what we heard, to share what we heard God saying.
Yeah.
Every single one of us got the green light.
Wow.
Of us felt we really had a green light from God. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We didn't have any plans to speak of. We just said, yes, we feel that God is speaking to us.
Wow.
Saying, take this to the next step. And so we did. We took it.
I find it incredible when I hear about these pivotal moments, because we go by faith and we say yes, and we have no idea what's coming. And it's the scariest place to be, because starting a school is not an easy thing. It is not. There's so much to do. But you had this group of women that were praying. And I remember, because we attended church together, met your sweet girls in the toddler room in the nursery. Like, I go way back with you. And I remember this core group of people that were praying for this whole concept of, Christian education. And for me at the time, high school, I was not in that stage to give anything like that. But that really, really stayed with me over the years of just a small group with a big prayer and a massive amount of faith saying, okay, God, we want this. So from that point on, how would you describe this journey of Kings and the history of it?
Well, we realized that we didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were moms. None of us were educators. So we were smart enough to consult some educators. So we got a couple of people, gathered a few other people who might know a little bit more about this, and a couple of people with their PhD in education. Dr. Bergman and Dr. Linda Williams joined our little group. And we got some advice from the Ontario Alliance of Christian Schools, as it was called at the time. And they recommended that we form a school society, it was called, and apply to get charitable status, because you can't really fundraise without giving a tax receipt, right?
Yeah.
That really spurs people on. So we did that. We got charitable status, and we formed a proper organization with a very exciting name of the Halton Region Christian Education Association. Very exciting. And then we just started to talk to people, and we didn't have a staff, we didn't have a principal, we didn't have land, and we didn't have money, but we had a prayer. And we just felt God giving us the green light every step of the way. One of the early things we did, my background is in research and strategy, and one of the early things we did was hand out these very low-tech orange colored surveys to all the grade 5, 6, 7, and 8 parents from all the surrounding elementary
Mm.
Christian schools. And there were a lot of them. And the survey basically was very simple. If there was a Christian school within a reasonable commute of your Christian high school, within a reasonable commute, how likely would you be to send your kids? And 88% of the respondents said they would be either likely or highly likely.
Wow.
So that was another green light, like very, very affirming. And the survey also asked, would you require busing? Would you like the school to have you? Like really super basic things that we hadn't even made decisions on yet.
Yeah.
So we got that green light through those orange forms and decided that we would take it to the next step. The first donation is the hardest one to get. And ours came out of nowhere.
Wow.
So a community member heard about our project and bought us our land. So we've been looking for a piece of land for about a year and had zeroed in on this site where we are now. It's, I think, 8.5 acres at the southwest corner of Burnhamthorpe and Neagawa. It wasn't the first property we looked at, but it did seem to be the most practical one. There was nothing here. So we weren't going to move into an old school and renovate it. We were going to start from scratch.
Right.
And so somebody bought this property for us and sold it to us for $1.
That's incredible.
It was incredible.
That's a green light.
That is a huge green light. Your first donation's the hardest.
Yeah.
So that was the first one, and then we were off to the races. After that, we were able to hire a principal, and we hired a very dynamic, visionary principal who had been the principal at Hamilton District Christian High and was ready for a change, ready for one last big hurrah in his career. And a lot of the things we did were his vision, his ideas. A lot of the different things we do were ideas that he had. And his name was Jim Vanderkoy. He's retired now, but he was really pivotal in establishing a lot of the things we do here.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. That is beautiful.
And then we built the building in stages, in phases, not obviously what we have now, but we opened up on September 4th, 2001 with 64 students.
Wow.
And 6 buses. So we wanted our buses all over town so people would know about us. We had like 3 kids on each bus, and we had a school full of lockers and hardly any kids, so every kid could have 4 lockers.
Amazing. Well, you have to start somewhere, and that's what we're advertising with buses all over Oakville, right?
And we wanted to position ourselves for growth, recognizing that people would see the opportunity and say, "Oh, something cool's going on there."
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Here we are. And then 6 years into the process, I was working for another company, and 6 years into the process, the school recognized that they needed a director of admissions and communications. So I applied for that job and I got it.
And you got the job. And you've been there ever since.
This is my 19th year. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That is incredible. And what a journey it has been for you. You have watched the school from the digging the shovel to the dirt to right now today, and you are almost finished your incredible career.
Yes, I have a couple months of active in-office responsibilities and then a couple months working through the summer to fill in any gaps that are required. And August 15th, Alison and another colleague will be running the admissions department, and I will no longer be employed by Kings.
Wow. Well, congratulations on this incredible journey and exciting things for your future ahead. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, lots in the works for the other side of things for me. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Sharon, for giving us that background. That really helps. And I'm also going to link the so that people can dive into the website a little bit more as well, just to do their own research. But Alison, tell me, I know you've talked about the fact that you have a grade 8 and grade 11, but can you talk about how your current role at the Christian school has impacted you and your family, and how it has made a difference to you in your life and in your family's life?
Well, I worked in education for 18 years in a secular environment. And so moving over to a Christian school was just like a beautiful breath of fresh air. To have every Friday morning, we have research and development and devotions with the staff. And so to pray together as a staff and to be able to talk about things of faith openly with a staff, with your
Yeah. Yeah.
colleagues. It's just beautiful. It's just so wonderful um, to have that professional, um, to have that faith element within the professional environment too. And then from a school perspective, weekly chapels and Bible verses around the school, and just the Christian worldview being woven into every class, and
Yeah.
faith such a big part of course, the education side. And so for me to have faith just covered over all of that was just, it just felt so freeing. It was like I could finally just fully be myself
Right.
in my place of work,
Yeah.
which was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm so encouraged just by the different ways that the administration continues to bring the focus of faith back to the forefront and keep it at the forefront, that we are here to honor God and to serve God and to point kids towards Jesus. And we're a school, we want them to get a phenomenal education,
Mhm.
but along with that, we care about their character and who they're becoming as young people and contributing to society. And we care about their faith. We want them to know who God is and who Jesus is, and that they are loved. And whether those seeds are planted now and they sprout later, or they sprout while they're here,
Yeah.
we just pray over them. So to have that as part of my professional career and a focus when I'm at work, it just fills my heart with so much joy. Um, so that's impacted me personally for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
And then having a daughter at the school, just knowing what the alternatives are, and what how she's being cared for and nurtured
Mhm.
at Kings is so meaningful for me as a parent.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just that again, so students have Bible classes in from grade 9 to 11, it's required, and then in grade 12, it's an optional elective for them. But the Christian worldview is woven into every class,
Right.
and so science class and math class and
Mhm.
history, all of it. And I
Yeah.
just love that she's getting all of those subjects from a Christian perspective and able to sort of reconcile, well, how do God and science work together?
Yeah.
Because God is the creator of science and
Yeah.
he is just in every part of it. And I love that is um, that her education is saturated in that.
Yeah.
So for me as a parent, that is very comforting for me.
Mhm.
Um,
I
so
agree.
it's been, I've seen my daughter in grade 11, I've seen her faith really blossom, and I mean, for her, the seeds that have been planted are blooming, and it's really beautiful. And I really believe that her experience at King's is a strong contributor to that.
Wow, that's amazing. What I think
Mm.
I love too about the fact that Kings, they're helping kids understand that it's not, your faith isn't compartmentalized. It is completely integrated. When Christ is in you, everything is impacted, everything. And that's what Kings is doing, whether you're on a sports team or music or drama or theater, because every teacher there is trying to help focus on who God is and honoring God through the gifts and the talents. And even when French is really hard, and I can tell you right now, my grade 9 French is not easy. But I just, even talking to her last night, just like, we really just need to pray about these things. So the connection of having, your parent at home trying to be praying with your child, and then knowing that they can be cared for and prayed for at school, it's just such a really beautiful circle of
Mhm.
strengthening of their faith. And like you said, seeds being planted, Allison, seeds being planted that may not bloom until beyond and beyond. But for those that it is blooming early, they can really dig deep
Mhm.
into their faith, because teachers and staff are waiting right there at the sideline, so to speak, to help encourage them. So that is what really truly sets Kings apart for sure.
Mhm.
What would you say, Sharon, about what makes how Kings is making an impact in the lives of students?
Well, I mean, I hope and pray that every student is shaped
Mhm.
profoundly by their 4 years at King's, or their 1 or 2 or 3 years, typically.
Mhm.
Um, I think most of us can remember things more vividly from high school than we do from other 4-year points of our lives. Like just so much happening in high school. Your hormones are raging, your identity is being formed, you're figuring out who you are, you're figuring out who you want to be, figuring out who you don't want to be. And we
Yes.
love that to be grounded in Christ. So we view every single student as an image bearer of Christ. And this isn't just something we do. We actually live into this and believe this, that when we're dealing with a student, they bear God's image.
Yes.
We love them. We care for them. We treat them with respect and dignity. They feel that. They know they are loved. They know they are cared for. If you talk to any random student from Kings, one of the first things they'll say about their experience is, I know my teachers care about me.
Wow.
And sometimes we do that. Sometimes we just walk around and talk to kids about their experiences.
Yeah.
And I took a video camera around once and interviewed 15 random students. And the first thing 14 of them said about Kings was, I love my teachers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I can't say that about all the teachers I had in high school. Really, with my music teacher, that was about it. But these kids love their teachers because they know their teachers love them. And if you're in an environment where people respect you, people listen to your opinion, people are kind, people are thoughtful, people are accommodating, people are inclusive,
Yeah.
then you can learn. And this is the key. If you're in an environment where you're not respected, where you're afraid of being laughed at if you ask a question that was just asked by somebody else and you weren't paying attention, if you're afraid of being pushed around in the halls or bullied or teased, you will not learn.
No.
Because your emotions are tied up with all the things, the negative things you have to deal with.
Absolutely.
But let's say you put that aside and you put a student in a nurturing environment where they're cared for and where it's cool to be nice. You put a kid in that environment, that child will learn.
Yeah.
That child will grow. That child will be more receptive to the messaging that we want to weave into every single subject. Alison said, the messaging that you are loved, you are cared for. And not just by us, but by the one who created you and knows you best. For a student to really grasp that during their 4 years at King's is monumental.
Life-changing.
Life-changing, life-changing.
Really is.
And lots of kids will come to me at the end of the 4 years, and I might not have noticed their trajectory along the way, but they will come to me and say, you know, it was in grade 10 when things clicked for me. Or all of a sudden I realized that the things my parents were saying that I would just sort of take whatever. Now, it's true. It's true. And a lot of kids really deepen their faith and have strong friendships in a Christian community through their experience at King's.
Yeah. That's really, really impactful. So it's not just what they read, it's actually what they hear through the teachers. They're actually seeing it in action, day to day through various activities and classes. So it's, so they really mean it.
And the teachers are so kind. You never hear a raised voice. Alison and I do many, many tours. I've done, as I said, 6,400 tours. I have never walked into a class that I had to apologize for. I've never walked into a class where a teacher is yelling or kids are unruly or where I'm embarrassed to walk in unannounced with strangers. I've never had that problem. So it's really, really encouraging that this is the kind of atmosphere that that God has been able to establish through really strong Christian leaders. Administration is very focused on this consistent culture. I think the culture at King's is one of our biggest attractions, and it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, speaking of which, and the culture, Alison, can you talk a little bit about the offerings of King's? What are some of the extracurricular things, and what could parents kind of look toward?
We have a large number of extracurriculars, and I know that Sharon, at one point, she was able to name all the sports. Do you remember how many there were, Sharon?
There's 19 sports for young ladies and 19 sports for gentlemen. I used to be able to rattle them all off, but
yes, she could.
I'll send people to the site. It's okay.
Oh, so there's lots of athletics to get involved in. We have a really strong extracurricular athletic program, which is a draw for many students. It's competitive. The coaching is excellent. they win games and awards, competitions. Like it's fantastic. So that's something that's really wonderful about Kings, but not every student is an athlete. And we love our athletes and we love our non-athletes. We have a really strong theater arts program as well. Or just arts program. We've got a great band, and within band, there's a jazz band and a strings. There's a wonderful strings program. We just had Mary Poppins the musical that went to production and was phenomenal. Incredible talent, incredible direction from the teachers, just a great production. And there's opportunities on stage and off stage for students, so lots of ways that they can get involved. We also offer a global trips program. So between the 2 semesters, students get a week off, and we run a set of global trips where students have the opportunity to travel with their peers and with some teachers. And there's a few that consistently happen every year, every other year. And then there's others that are just to different destinations. And one of the trips that reoccurs every year is a service trip to the Dominican Republic. And that is a wildly popular trip among students, which I think is so beautiful because students have this desire to go and serve. And it's a combination of work projects where they're helping to build and construct things in the Dominican Republic, and then also partnering with a local church to support some of the programs that they do, and working with children, which is always such a joy. So I love that that is a trip that many of our students look forward to and participate in. They maxed out their numbers last year. They could not take another body. I think they had about 70 students and almost 15 staff that went. Like, it was just a big, beautiful trip down there to serve. So that's a really cool opportunity that students can participate in, just getting that unique experiences of traveling the world with their peers and learning, growing in that way. There's lots of other clubs as well that students can participate in, and a variety of different things, social, sort of mental health, community building clubs, and Model United Nations, and different STEM focused clubs. So a wide variety for students who have lots of varied interests. Another thing that I really love is the Praying Parents group that we have. So Sharon started this. When did you start the Praying Parents group, Sharon?
98
years ago.
Yeah.
I guess right from the start,
right
when you
from the beginning
in October, for the month of October, that was the first group of praying parents. So that is something that Sharon just continued through all of her years. And she would, every once a week, she would gather a group of parents who wanted to pray for students and the school. And it's an open invitation to all of Kings. And I have had the privilege to take that on from Sharon, and I get to pray with those parents every week. And Sandy, you're a part of that group. So it's a joy to have you involved in your heart for Kings and the students. And we just pray that God would be moving and working, and that his will would be done, and that students would just really thrive in knowing that they're loved, and that culture of Kings would continue to just be fostered and strengthened, and continue to be what it is. We just love it. And so that is a joy, to gather with other parents who just have a heart for Kings. And what's so cool about that Praying Parents group is we have a handful of parents in that group whose students have since graduated, but they still love Kings so much. And we're so impacted by it and care about what it's doing, that they continue to come back and pray with us. It's just, it's amazing. It's
it really
amazing.
is. It's really neat to hear what they were praying for, say, 10 years ago, and how the answer to prayer is right in front of them. And they get to share that with us, this next batch of praying parents, so to speak. And it's just so good to see how it doesn't happen overnight. You know, there's many years of prayer for whether it be something big or small. But what I love so much, Alison and Sharon, thank you so much for starting this, but we get to listen to each other and we get to hear our hearts in confidence, but we get to hear answers to prayer. And it could just be over a test, or getting into university, or something with one of their older kids that's at university, or a student that's grade 8 that a parent that's praying for and what's going on with them. It's such a beautiful opportunity to bring things before the Lord, because and it brings us together. And now we get to know all these other moms, and we get to meet in person and on Zoom. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get connected, especially for anybody who's watching today or listening that is thinking of Kings. It's a great thing to do. You got to get involved right away. Just like you want to encourage your kids, get involved, do something. Same thing for parents. It's great.
And Sandy, we have noticed and have celebrated God's faithfulness. And I know that sort of sounds trite. Every church is celebrating its 50th anniversary, celebrating God's faithfulness. But it's unbelievable how faithful God has been to Kings every step of the way, in terms of our building. Like, this is a crazy story that a lot of people don't know, but we had built this first phase, and we didn't have it open in time for the first semester of grade 9 in 2020. No. Yeah, 2000. We were hoping to start in September 2000, but our building wasn't ready, so we had to rent another property off site. So we really hoped for it and ready for the first semester. And a school is a complicated thing to build, and you need lots of safety things in place and lots of inspections. Our final inspection happened, and we were granted an occupancy permit 20 minutes before the opening bell of second semester. Did you know that?
I did not know that story.
20 minutes we had. So we had lots of time. So it's funny how God has taken us so many times just to the brink where we had to depend on him. We had no choice but to depend on him. Yeah. And he's pulled through every time. And I've said many times that I feel like we have God's stamp of approval, his blessing. We've never had a serious accident here. We've never had a staff issue, scandal. Yeah. We've never had a financial problem. We've just been blessed every single way. Don't take that lightly. We don't take that for granted. We continue to pray for God's faithful protection and his encouragement and his sustenance, because we can't do anything outside of his power. No. And so we're so grateful for that. But it is remarkable. We're coming up to our 25th anniversary next year, and that will be a great celebration. Again, not to be trite, but a celebration of a quarter century of God's faithfulness here.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, really. It's a good reminder to constantly be praying that hedge of protection over all of the students, all of the parents coming and going, parking lot.
We have 750 people coming to this building every single day. Yeah. And they get here safely and they get home safely. Yeah. It's amazing.
It is. Really. It's a testimony to the faithfulness of God. He's just really, his hand is upon this school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just statistically, mathematically, you would expect more problems than we have, but we just don't. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, no school is out there issues. There's always going to be issues.
Yeah.
Because we
and that's right. And I tell people that all the time. We are not perfect. Yeah. We have 80 to 100 staff, humans like me. Yeah. Like not perfect, not 100% knowledgeable about everything, believe it or not, even though we're teachers and administration. We make mistakes. We're flawed. We have 675 flawed teenagers in the building. So of course, not everything goes perfectly all the time, but it goes remarkably smoothly considering the numbers involved. Yeah.
Yeah. But you guys have a process too. Like, you work through things with honesty and integrity and wisdom, and you work as a team to overcome the obstacles, because we know there's going to be obstacles. It's just a part of life. So, but you anticipate that. And I've seen and know that you guys have walked through so well, whether there's ups and downs, and you do that with integrity and with strength, and it takes courage.
Yeah, our admin team is very skilled at working with teenagers, and we don't really have a punitive system. We have a system that values reconciliation and restoration. So if something has gone wrong, and of course, like I say, 675 teenagers in the building, things go wrong. People make mistakes, people make bad decisions all the time. Yeah. But we have a process for dealing with that and bringing them to a state of acknowledging their error and turning in another direction, turning in a better direction, and reconciling with the people that might have been hurt in the process.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, if there are, hopefully there's prospective parents listening today, what would you say, both of you, you can answer, maybe start with you, Allison, what would you say to that family today that's just kind of on the fence? And maybe they are at OCS, which I used to teach there, Sharon. Did you know that? I was in the JKSK.
I'd forgotten that. That's
Yeah.
right.
So, and actually recently I've been going back to the same kindergarten class that I started teaching in,
Oh,
reading my kids' book to them. So it's just such a funny full circle. So when you said OCS, I'm like, oh, I love
yeah,
OCS. There
yeah.
could be parents that are at OCS right now. There could be a Catholic school, public school, maybe they're homeschooled, maybe they're just in this, what do we do? And sometimes finances obviously are an issue, but I always believe that there's a way. If God has this path for you, He's going to open the doors for you. But what would you both say to a prospective family that is considering Christian education for high school?
Mhm. Well, I think I would encourage them to really look at all of the options that are available
Mm.
and and just to consider how they're different and what their priorities are. Um, and to really try to who Kings is, what Kings is, and what makes us unique. Understanding class sizes. And Sharon talked a lot about how the teachers genuinely care, and the culture, which is so different, a culture of kindness, where the strife that is common, I think, in public schools is not the same at King's. It's just the environment is very different. The culture is very different. I think understanding that. And again, what I mentioned before about at King's, how we care about their education. We are a high school. We want them to learn well and enjoy learning and be critical thinkers and ask questions. But we don't just care about that. We also care about their character and who they're becoming and their knowledge of God and understanding how deeply they're loved by God. And so all of those things so we care about the students as a whole, not just that they're going to learn things and pass a test. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that also really sets Kings
Mhm.
apart. Um, so I think it's just understanding what the differences are and what Kings offers.
Yeah.
I know for me as a parent, I there have been so many times where I've just thought, man, I'm so thankful that my daughter is at King's. You
Mm.
know, she'll come home and talk about something she did in class or a challenge that she had and how she overcame it and how her what that process of overcoming was and how the people at King's and the culture at King's and that faith element just all played into it.
Mhm.
So all of that, it's just such a special place, and I think it's important to really take the time to understand what King's is all about and to talk to other
Yeah,
families.
that's true.
We don't pay for any marketing. It's word of mouth, which I think is such a beautiful thing
It really
because
is.
you talk to another family who has a child at King's and they're not going to sugarcoat anything for you. They're going to give you
Yeah.
their honest opinion.
Yep.
Um, and we get so many people that come in from referrals, that my neighbor had a child at King's, or, their friend came to King's and loved it. And
Mm.
so I
That's
think
great.
talking to other families who
That's
have
great.
students with us is a great
Yeah.
thing to do too.
Great. Very good suggestion. Why don't we
Mhm.
finish off here, Sharon, with you? What would you say to a prospective family?
Well, one of the concerns that people sometimes have, and this might be somewhat of a historical issue, where some private schools or Christian schools were not up to the standards of the public schools.
Mm.
And, it's not like just a bunch of parents from church that are teaching these subjects. We hire subject experts. The physics teacher, doesn't also teach music and gym. The physics teacher specializes in physics. He or she went to university for physics and teaches
Right.
physics,
Yeah.
right? The drama teacher is an actor and has got a master's of fine arts and theater arts. This isn't someone who just, knows how to memorize a poem. This is someone who
Yeah.
really knows their craft.
Love
So
it.
every single teacher is an expert in their subject, and
Mm.
our kids do very well because of it. And small class sizes, the average class size is 21. Kids have access to their teachers. The
Mhm.
teachers know them by name. The teachers pride themselves on knowing their kids' names by the end of the first week. And they endeavor to really connect with their students. So
Yeah.
that makes a
Yeah,
big difference.
for sure.
The other thing that I want to mention is we have a bursary program, a financial aid program that we really want people to use. We have
Mm.
a considerable budget for that bursary program. That budget isn't always used up. So I want
Interesting.
people to know that there is access to financial aid.
Mm.
Um, if both parents are working in a very well-paying job, then the bursary is not for them. But if it's parents with modest incomes, other kids at elementary Christian schools, paying for university,
Yeah.
one parent working outside the home and the other parent just working to support the family at home.
Mhm.
There are lots of situations where we're very happy to provide financial aid, and
Yeah.
people should access that freely.
Yeah.
They can talk to someone in the admissions department about that, and we'll give them that
Yeah.
application.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's a reality. There's a
Oh,
cost.
it is.
There's a
And
cost.
it's, yeah, there's a cost associated with this, but because we're a registered charity, we're allowed to give tax receipts for a
Yeah.
portion of the
Amazing.
tuition, which a lot of people don't anticipate. That helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Wow, we could go on and on. I mean, there's so many other aspects to our conversation, but I think for now, I just want to thank you for your time, for the energy and the effort, and your faithfulness in your current roles at Kings, and the impact it's having on so many families. And even though we have to go by faith and trust that whatever God is doing now, you may not see that in your grade 9 students right now. They might be 25 and one day start to realize that was actually a really good part of my life, even though it was hard, but God planted seeds. So that's my prayer for Kings. And as we, as praying moms, that God will just continue to do the work that He has called you to do, all of the staff, all of the students, and that He's just going to move and do amazing things. Like Alison, we talk about in the prayer group just for revival,
Mhm.
that Kings would just experience this beautiful gift of the Holy Spirit working in the hearts of students, especially those that are new to the faith, and then those that are, well versed in a Christian home who are still trying to figure out how to personalize it. So I love how you mentioned at the beginning, Sharon, just how that you had the head knowledge, but you needed the heart, right? And it just the click. So that's
Yeah.
what we pray,
Yeah.
for all of the students and for all of the teachers. So yeah, to God be the glory, and we thank you for Kings, for what you're doing, and I thank you for your time today in this amazing conversation about Christian education. So thanks, ladies.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Lee. It's
Sandy.
a
It's a
joy.
pleasure.
I could talk for 10 more hours. So if somebody wants to talk with
I
me more,
know. True.
chat.
I know there's so much more we could cover, but I really believe this has been a great start. And if we need to have another conversation, you know where I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Andy,
Wonderful.
for
Thank
joining
you
Great.
us.
so much.
Thanks. Have a great day, ladies.
Bye.
Bye-bye.